We should be popping up on the live stream now. We'll give folks a few minutes to get in. I'm going to jump on the channel and see if we're live too. Should have notifications popping up. We should be popping up on the live stream. Yep, let me get the, make sure I am. There we go. So we are on the right channel. Hold up. All right, looks like we are starting to stream USCA media. I see the live stream. We got a few guests already. Welcome, welcome. Kay, I see you. I'm about to mod you up. What's going on? Oh, I gotta switch accounts to mod you up. Kay, give me 1 second. Welcome, family. Welcome. Come on in. Come on in. Sit down. Have a seat. What's going on? You are in for a treat today, family. Another treat. Let me get my moderators going here. Okay, you are modded up right now. What's going on, Ronnie Lynn, ADOS Los Angeles? It's the Black ADOS. What's up, ADOS Bay Area? What's good? Quentin, what's up, fam? ADOS H-Town. What's going on? Houston in the building. Hey, I see you. The HR Maven. I see you. I see you. Drop your ADOS city in the chat. What's up, Maureen? Drop ADOS city in the chat. If you hear, hey, Monica, you mind with us today? Thank you, fam. Appreciate it. Who else we got in here? Let's see. Bay Area in the house. What's up, fam? What's going on? Welcome once again. You are in for another treat. Welcome to, of course, ADOS California Media. You are listening to and watching right now one of the premier ADOS YouTube independent channels out there right now. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you for taking your time out on a beautiful Saturday here in Northern California. Hopefully it's beautiful where you are too. We're going to have a beautiful conversation today about Prop 16. We're going to continue some of what we discussed last week in this 3-part series, talking specifically to the Black California, ADOS California community about Prop 16. What's going on? Shout out to the moderators in the chat. Dr. K, I see you. Presidia, what's up? What's going on? We are going to be discussing Prop 16 once again for the hour here while we have your attention. We're going to let you file in. Come on in, have a seat. While you are joining, do a couple of things for us. Like the channel, subscribe to the channel, hit that share button. When you hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell so that you get notified once we go live. And make sure you tune in, you share this video, invite a friend, tell a friend to tell another friend, especially if you or anyone you know has questions, comments, or feedback with respect to Proposition 16. This is the proposition that would effectively bring affirmative action back to the state of California. It would legalize affirmative action. It would repeal Prop 209. Once again, Prop 16 would repeal Prop 209 and make affirmative action legal in California. This is part 2 of our series of community discussions with respect to Prop 16. So if you have any questions, comments, feedback, use the chat, use the comment section. We will be answering your questions as we go along. Today's theme broadly is what's in it for us? What is in Prop 16 for Black California? We have another esteemed panel. I'm going to introduce them in a minute, let them introduce themselves rather in a minute or so. But come on in, have a seat, join us. If you have questions about anything you hear today, please, like I said, use the chat, use the comment section. We will be having a conversation with you. And once again, this is part 2 of our series of community conversations with the Black ADOS California community, specifically talking to you and with you about Prop 16. Nobody else is talking specifically to you and with you about Prop 16, but we are. So thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Saturday afternoon here in California. All right. So today's topics, again, Prop 16, what's in it for us, Black California, ADOS California. As you can see, we have an esteemed, amazing panel here once again to have the discussion, but you're here also. So again, tell us what you think, tell us what questions you have as well. Let's have this conversation. But I want to turn it to the panel so the panel can introduce themselves, tell us who you are, a little bit about your background, and we will get started. Why don't we start with Maureen?
I have to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Chris. And my name is Maureen Simmons. I am currently the co-chair of the Students for Proposition 16 Coalition. And I'm also the student from UC Berkeley. Go Bears, just graduated in May. And I started the Proposition 16 initiative while I was a student at UC Berkeley. And so it wasn't known as Prop 16. At that point, it was Repeal Prop 209 initiative. But since then, we have made it through the houses in our legislature and are now on the November ballot. And so I'm happy to talk about what Prop 16 means for the ADOS community.
Thank you, Maureen. Presidia, talk to us.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Presidia, born and raised in Oakland, California. I'm a lover of education for the diverse learners out there. I'm learning with you, so I'm really, really excited for us to have this conversation tonight, and also to really lend my expertise in what I know best is learning, right? So let's all learn together. Let's do the work, and I'm just excited to be here. I'm also on the leadership team for ADOS Bay Area. Represent in the chat, you guys. Let's represent. And just overall, so excited to be with Maureen, to be with Chris, to be with so many others that have taught me so much thus far. So I'm just ready to learn and have the conversation.
Thank you, Presidia. And don't one, these two guests are being modest, okay? Maureen started the Prop 16 campaign, okay? Made history with the Prop 16 campaign. She's also of AB 3121 fame, which is the California Task Force to Study and Develop Reparations Proposals for African Americans. So they're being modest, but these are the heavy hitters. Presidia is one of the founders, one of the originators of the ADOS Bay Area chapter. So we got the heavy hitters today. Also can't forget our amazing moderators. We got Dr. Kay Harris moderating the chat, taking your questions, picking up your questions, and making sure that we get them. We got the amazing Monica in the chat as well, and we may have a guest appearance from one of our other moderators, Ricky. I'm not sure if you're there, fam, but if you are, say what's up in the chat. We got an amazing panel. We got an amazing team here. What you can expect is, one, we're going to get right into the meat of the discussion. Prop 16, what's in it for us? We're gonna talk about what kinds of benefits, what kinds of resources we can expect and we want from Prop 16, and then talk about how we get there from here to there if and when Prop 16 does pass. So very, very important conversation. And we're also gonna get to your questions, your comments, your feedback. So if you have any questions about anything that we talk about today, feel free to let us know in the chat. It's panel discussion plus conversation. We want to make this conversation style. But before we go forward, be sure that you also check out last week's broadcast where we discussed some of the most important myths with respect to Prop 16. So there's a lot of myths and misinformation and disinformation being shared about Prop 16. So go back to last week's broadcast right here on ADOSCA excuse me, media. We had an amazing conversation around the myths with respect to Prop 16. We talked about the myth that Prop 16 is some form of reverse racism. We talked about the myth that Prop 16, if it passed, won't benefit Black people. We talked about the myth that Prop 16 will make quotas. We went through a number of the different myths that people are describing or using to describe the Prop 16 campaign. We confronted them head on. We debunked each and every single one of those myths. So don't forget to check out that broadcast. It's right here on ADOSCA Media. Just go back 1 week, same time. Last week we were here and we had an amazing conversation with some of the same folks you see here today, but we had some other folks join us too. And again, this is part 2 in the series of 3. So we will be back most likely next week as well to complete our series. The last day to vote in the California initiatives and elections is Tuesday, November 3rd. So fam, we have 10 days, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, about 10 days between now and the last day to vote. Most of us have our ballots already, mailed to us. If you don't have your ballot, now's a good time to go online and find your ballot. If you haven't voted yet, watch this broadcast and please consider voting yes on Prop 16. That's our position as ADOSCA Media. But ADOSCA, ADOS California also has a voter guide for you to check out where we break down every single ballot measure statewide and we give our recommendation. We also did a broadcast going through each of the propositions a couple of weeks ago as well. And you can also find that here on ADOSCA Media. All right, let's get to it. Prop 16, what's in it for Black California? I'm going to put this question to the panel. I'm going to put this question to you two in the chat as well. What is, if Prop 16 passes, right? And let's break this down in clear terms. If Prop 16 is approved by the voters on November 3rd, what is in it for Black California? What can we expect as Black Californians? What should we expect as Black California in the way of benefits? What's it gonna do for us? What should it do for us? I'll throw it to the panel. Either of you want to take that first?
Yeah, I'll hop in. So what we should expect from the passage of Proposition 16 is, first of all, as you pointed out at the top of the show, it would amend the California Constitution so that race and gender can be considered in public admissions, public employment, and public contracts. And so so that's the first thing, is that we will amend the state constitution so that we can consider race. But what does that consideration for race really mean? Let's look at that in practical terms, what that means. The passage of Prop 16 means that government agencies, for example, universities, college admissions directors, that they can consider race, but they can also begin to put forth and create recruitment programs to specifically target the Black community. This is something that under Prop 209, they're simply not able to do. As I talked about last week, during our panel, that was what drove me to the repeal in the first place, is that every time we talked about any redress for issues that Black students were facing, in particular on UC Berkeley's campus, we were told that they could not do anything specifically for Black students because Prop 209 says that race can't be considered. And so because they could not consider our race in admissions, they couldn't consider our race when they need to redress any issues that we have. So this is a huge, huge, huge deal for those of us in the Black community who often face discrimination in a number of ways, whether it be in admissions and public contracts, where we're often left out of those contracting deals, public employment, where we can be overlooked, where we know when we look at the disparities in the workforce that we often are not hired, or we're not moving at the pace of our white counterparts. So this is great because this gives an opportunity for us to be able to look at those numbers, be able to look at the data on the other side of Prop 16, and to be able to challenge and push back and say that, companies and or universities are not diverse. Now, I want to stress that this does not mean that this will create quota systems, because there will not be anything that Prop 16 will do that will say that there has to be a certain number of Black students or Black employees or Black contractors. There is no quota. That is illegal. But the creation of recruitment strategies specifically aimed at us is beneficial, because it gives us, those of us like me and you, Chris, who have been engaged in trying to get certain things for our community, but are faced with barriers that were put up by Prop 209, we can go back to those agencies now, whether they're employers or admissions departments, and begin to work with them and say that, in our communities, we are not seeing the admissions rate or employment rates that would put us on par with counterparts. And now we can begin to see programs put into place that would right that.
Great points. Presidia, I want to come right to you. What's in it for us? What should we expect if and when Prop 16 is approved by the voters? What are you looking forward to?
I am looking forward to more of us, ADOS, in educational institutions that are high ranking. According to a study by Zachary Bleemer, for the effects of what Proposition 209 did, it actually reduced the number of Black students in these institutions by 68%. So that's a lot of students that are not actually benefiting from these from affirmative action, right? And so continuing looking deeper into the study, we see that we want to be sure that Asian students and white students actually were not impacted by affirmative action in negative ways. So the students that were mostly impacted were Black and Hispanic students, because they were not allowed to have access to these spaces. So with affirmative action, we can expect that more Black students would be a part of these institutions, in turn get careers that are more, likely for them to accumulate more wealth. And our goal is to close the racial wealth gap, right? So we got to understand that when they're in these spaces, they have access to these to resources, and they'll be able to network and really build on, who they are as individuals. So I'm looking at the individual, and I'm also looking at the collective. So us collectively would have more opportunity to amass wealth because of the standard of these universities, right? People are looking at their job applications. What school did you go to? What extracurricular activities were you able to do because you were part of these universities? So just expecting more of us into these spaces. And with that, knowing that when they are in a part of the UC system, they're more likely to gain careers that are more they're able to make more money. So that's what I'm looking forward to, because education won't close the racial wealth gap, but it's a part of it, and we should not dismiss it.
Right on. No, and thank you for that. And I want to hone in on a couple of things that you both said, but just to give the audience a chance here to also respond. What is it that you are looking for if and when Prop 16 passes? What are you expecting? What kind of benefits are you looking for? Are you expecting if and when we do bring affirmative action back to California? I want to touch on a couple of things that you both said and get a little bit deeper on this particular question. But just, if I could take a minute or so to give some of my own feedback, what I'm expecting is a big push to get specific Black agendas introduced and passed at almost every, if not every single level of government here in the state of California. So I'm talking from your local city council, your school board, your county commissioners, the state assembly level, the state senate level, from the governor's office. Also, I'm looking forward to seeing specific Black agendas introduced on each and every single level. And I'm looking to see each of those specific Black agendas get approved and then implemented at every single level. So one of the benefits of Prop 16, what's in it for us, is that a specific Black agenda becomes legal again. It becomes possible again. We made this point in passing last week, but it's important to underscore right now, if you go to your local city council, your school board, your county, if you're someone who cares about a Black agenda, as the movement for ADOS, we are very focused on a Black agenda, right? So if you go to your local elected officials, your local government agencies, and say, hey, we need to do this specifically for Black folks here in California, whether it be around education, business contracts, jobs. Right now, if you try to do that, it's illegal. They are going to say, we can't do this because of Proposition 209. We can't do this because of Proposition 209. If you want to do any specific targeting where you include race in the targeting, you have to bring down Prop 209. Prop 16 brings down Prop 209 and allows us to make specific requests and build specific Black agendas. So that's what I'm looking forward to, with respect to Prop 16 passing. Just to touch on a couple of things that you both mentioned, you both mentioned education. So there's I want to talk more specifically about education. Both of you are, super, high educated folks, right? A lot of the folks that we had on the panel last week are also very highly educated folks. Generally, however, though, right, the ADOS community, the Black community is going to college and or graduating at a rate of something around 16 to 20%, right? So the question is, if Prop 16 does pass, do you expect that you'll see more ADOS graduating, not just from the more higher elite schools, but college in general? So one, can we expect the graduation rate, the admission and graduation rate, which are two different things? If you've been to school, those are two different things. Okay, mm-hmm. School and then finishing is two different things. But can we expect the admission and graduation rates to go up? And then second part of the question, and if I have to restate it, I will, but just so you have it in your minds, the second part of the question is, what about the benefits to Prop 16 or from Prop 16 for Black folks, ADOS folks in California who don't go to college or don't want to go to college? Are there benefits in the K through 12 system that we should expect? Either of you can jump in on this one.
Yeah. So I'll chime in on the first part of your question first. The recruitment and retention of ADOS students. And we know, and again, this is one of the most critical reasons that concerned me as a student at UC Berkeley. During the time that I was at Berkeley, which was about 2018, the Black student population was 1.9% of the entire populace. the populace was over 40,000 students. And so 1.9% of over 40,000 is a handful, right? That was terrible. And even of that 1.9%, when we looked at the retention rate, that means they were admitted, but then they weren't retained. And a lot of that retention had to do with a lack of resources, whether that was housing resources, food insecurities that happen because these are students that are coming from communities where they didn't have a lot of financial resources. This also talks about just the upkeep of being in college, not having the support to undergird them through that process. These were all things that we wanted the chancellor to be able to address, but could not address because of Prop 209. Prop 16, however, would mean that the universities would be able to set aside funds so that when Black students are admitted and enrolled, that they do have the resources to specifically target that community and to assist financially in ways that they have not been able to specifically address. That's going to go a long way for retention rates, because now when students are admitted, they will have the specific resources that they need to be able to maintain their admission and to be able to matriculate and to graduate, because we know that, as you pointed out, just getting admitted, that's only half the battle. Going through the process is really important, and then to graduation. But I want to touch on something that Presidia said, and then I will let Presidia answer the other part of your question if she has something, is that a lot of opponents point out the fact that during Proposition 209, that Black students were still being enrolled into the UCs and that there was no lack in that. But what they don't point out, that Presidia did rightfully point out, is that Black students were being admitted to the UCs that were not quite as prestigious. And as a graduate of UC Berkeley, I can tell you that that degree matters. The amount of opportunity that it is afforded to me because I graduated from UC Berkeley, the types of law schools that I'm able to approach just by the name, the brand of UC Berkeley, is important. Had I graduated from one of the other UCs that was lower ranked, I don't know where that would have situated me. So I can say that Prop 16 would open up the pathway so that Black students are not pushed out into the UC systems that are not UCLA or UC Davis, UC Berkeley, etc., and create opportunities so that the universities can offer everything from scholarships, much more robust financial aid packages, as well as other tuition and housing and all of those sorts of resources.
Right on. Priscilla, do you have anything to add either to the question of, should we expect there to be more ADOS Black folks here in California, both admitted to the UC system and then also finishing school if Prop 209 comes down and Prop 16 passes, right? If Prop 16 passes, and also if you have any thoughts or ideas about what impact, if at all, there would be on the other group of ADOS Black folk here in California that don't go to college, that don't go to the UC system, that just finish high school and then enter the workforce.
Yes, I'd like to touch on two things. Last week, Dr. Kayla Harris touched on how it's important for us to even allow the ability to choose for students, your family, your offspring, people who are going to come after you, to choose if they want to go to college. And then with that choice, what career would they go into subsequently? And I want to touch on how it's important to remember when we're thinking about education in K through 12, we have to remember who's teaching our babies, who's teaching ADOS children. Is it someone that looks like them? Because when someone knows your experience, looks like you, knows what you're going through at home. They know ADOS life, and they're teaching kids, K through 12. They're more likely to have empathy for them, connect with them, and they grow from that. So whatever teacher they get, whatever educational, support they get, they don't even have to be a teacher, right? It's so important for our students, for our babies to get people that look like them around them. So through that, like regardless of what UC system or what regardless of what college system they go through, um if they want the choice, we want to make sure that they have the choice to go into teaching the students or even going to college. So you can't go become a teacher or kind of get into that realm unless you go to college. So I think it's all intertwined. I feel like when we have our children in education and we have our ADOS also teaching our children, we have to know that it doesn't only, stop at, the university system. Um, it also kind of bleeds into like all aspects of our life with education. And also I want to touch on the point that Maureen had stated, how retention rates have been an issue. I feel like just because the retention rate has been an issue does not mean we should not have affirmative action, period, right? What are the cultural competencies necessary to teach a Black child? We have to teach specifically to an ADOS child with empathy, compassion, understanding of historical trauma. So we have to remember that the UC system needs to change, right? So we can't say, oh, these students aren't doing X, Y, and Z. That's why they're not, succeeding. No, what does the UC system need to do in order to support students like ADOS students to succeed? So we need to go into those institutions and making sure that their teachers, their professors are trained well in order to support our students. If they see a lack of resource, are they trained to say, here's a resource for you, just in case the school cannot provide it yet, right? To teach to the whole child, not only to their minds, but to their whole bodies, to their lives. So I feel like as an educator, that is what I do. And I expect that from the highest elite colleges around California as well.
That was fire, super fire. I'm glad you touched on one. I'm glad you both touched on the expected impacts for the college students. I'm also glad that we did touch on what we can expect to see in terms of impact from the K through 12 level, right? It's about hiring, right? We from all the data that I've seen, we know, Black kids do better when there's Black teachers in the classroom, right? And because Prop 16 will have an effect on public employment, right? We can expect, and we should expect, to see more Black teachers in the classroom, and that should improve and should have an effect on the performance of Black students across the state. So not only should we see more Black students going into college, finishing college, Black teachers in the classroom, we should also in the K through 12 system, we should also see Black students start to perform better, right? Start to perform better in the classroom, and that in turn should have an effect on the college admission rates. And now you have a cycle, right? And we see this cycle in other communities, but we don't see it in our own, right? Where the performance, the better students perform, the more chance they go to college, the more chance they go to college, the more chance they finish college, right? And that has an effect, on the lives of not just those students, but also our communities as well. So thank you for touching on that. So there are some other benefits that we could discuss with respect to Prop 16. Remember, fam, for those in the audience, for those watching, what are you expecting? What do you expect to see with respect to Prop 16? What kind of benefits are you looking for Prop 16? Put it in the chat. Tell us what you want, right? Now, again, there are some other benefits, right? Prop 16 does focus on public employment, does focus on public contracting. So from the perspective of the Black business community, I personally expect to see more Black businesses getting more contracts from the state of California and from the counties within and from the local cities within as well. I expect Black businesses to be doing even better based on the passage of Prop 16. This is what I expect. Okay, this is what I want to see. I also expect to see more Black folks doing public jobs, getting those public jobs that are secure, that have high wages, that have high benefits, that have high take home pay. Right, I expect to see that. That's what my expectation is. That's what our expectation is. But let's talk about one of the, and this is probably one of the most important questions that we're going to ask today. We've talked for half of the conversation now about what we expect to see, what we want to see. Okay? How do we get there? Okay, because it's not the case, and let's be honest with the family, that once Prop 16 passes, we snap our fingers and boom, you see Black kids in college, you see them, and you see Black teachers, you see, Black businesses getting contracts, you see Black people doing all the construction jobs, right? Doesn't work that way, right? So what are some of your ideas? Maureen, I'll start with you, and then Presidia, I'll go to you, and then I'll follow up. What are your ideas about how we go from what we expect to actually get what we expect if and when Prop 16 passes?
All right. So I want to preface what I want to say by this idea of education being connected to wealth building. We know that is true. Now, that does not negate our claim for reparatory justice, and I'm not saying that this is not a zero sum, right? We know that our history in this country, all of the traumas that we've gone through with discrimination, all of those things are under our reparatory justice claim. That's AB 3121. However, that aside, when we start looking at how do we implement something like a Prop 16, I'm going to come back and say that on the other side of this, we have AB 3121, but in order to have what you're discussing, Chris, of being able to have those people in the positions that are going to recognize that there's an implementation that needs to happen with Prop 16, we have to begin in the ADOS community to position ourselves to understand that while everyone may not want to go to college, some of us are going to need to, because we can't continue as ADOS to have to go to somebody outside of ADOS to give us opportunities and then to say, okay, you need to hire us, you're not hiring us. Does that make sense? Like, we want people that are ADOS, that are anchored and centered in ADOS, that understand our community, and that would be ADOS people. So we have to, in our community, recognize that those of us that do have a desire to go to college should go to college, and that we should continue to understand that we are in there so that we can create the opportunities for our community. Now, that's one part of it. When it comes to Proposition 16 passing in just about, less than 10 days. And we are wanting to see this implemented for contractors, because that is a huge area where in California, we have those that are in positions of deciding who's going to get contracts. Typically, they're given contracts to people that look like themselves, and that's not us. That enforcement is going to come down to the individual level. That means that those businesses that are going up for contracts, those that are seeking to have a contract, are going to in some ways have to help to police that, because there is no oversight for Prop 16, just like there's no oversight for any of the laws that are pertaining to something where there's a lot of individual players. So on the one hand, it's like, yeah, this law will be passed. On the other hand, there is responsibility that individuals will have. That's not just the ADOS community. That's any community will have to ensure that they are being treated fairly in that community. We would love to say that this is going to pass and everybody's going to play fairly. We know that if that were the case, we wouldn't need Prop 16. If everybody was going to do what they were supposed to do when they're supposed to do it, we would not need Prop 16 at all. Prop 16 in itself is a way that's a gatekeeper to say that you must do, that you not must, but that you should consider these things. But it's going to be incumbent on the ADOS community for us to be able to look and go after those contracts. We have to begin in our community to recognize where the contracts are, to begin to make sure that we are building and cultivating businesses in our community, going after those contracts in great numbers, right? And also in employment, where are those jobs happening, so that we can begin to apply for those jobs and apply for them in great number. Because again, if we are waiting for someone else to give it to us, we know that we've been wronged in this system. I fear that if we are waiting for someone to do the right thing, we will be disappointed at Prop 16, when I think that the clarion call should be, this is an opportunity for us now to move forward.
Presidia, jump on in. How do we get from what we expect, what we want, to reality, right? It's not the case that Prop 16, once it passes, right, on November 4th or whenever whenever it goes into effect, will automatically mean more jobs for Black folks, will automatically mean more admission and retention, within the UC system, and especially at the higher levels of the UC system. It's not going to automatically mean your local Black-owned businesses are going to start getting more contracts. So what are some of your thoughts on how we go from there to where we want to go, from here to where we want to go?
Chris, I gotta say, I learned from you. This idea came from you. So we have to tap into the stakeholders of these organizations, these government officials, right? We got to get underneath them, their skin, whatever we want to call it, and organize. We got to talk to them. We got to go into these classrooms, these professionals' classrooms, let them know what we desire. Let them understand, if you are for justice, if you are for equity, if you are for equality, consider, ADOS, as we should be. If you, understand your Constitution, all men were created equal. Let's make sure that we are equal. Our outcomes are equal. And so when we think about what do we do to make this happen, I think we, like you said before, we're doing it now, right? We're organizing now to be a part of Prop 16. We've talked to Maureen. We know the components of the campaign, and we're making sure that we are a part of the conversation. And when we start, once Prop 16 passes, let's tap into universities. Let's email the presidents. We're ADOS. We must have a piece of the pie, right? Just like everybody else who deserves a piece of the pie. So just really understanding how those systems work, and going to their heads and tapping them on the heads like, hey, we are here and we're ready to work with you. We're ready to make sure we're looking at the numbers to make sure that we have an equal, stake in your university. If you want a diversity of life experiences, if you want a diversity of views, ADOS people have a very unique and special view of the United States. And that's one of the points that I'm going to actually bring up when I apply for my master's program. So my unique take on what we go through. And so just making sure that we are talking to them, we're organizing, and we're tapping into the stakeholders that are part of these institutions, these government contracts, and making sure once it passes, we're at the table. So those are some of my thoughts.
So thank you both. And I want to follow up and add some of my feedback here too, but I want to throw it to the audience as well. How do we, if Prop 16 does pass and is approved within less than 10 days, right? How do we make sure that we as Black California, ADOS California, get the benefits that we want, that we are owed, that we deserve, right? That's the question. Definitely want to hear what you think. It's not so easy a question to answer, because we have a history as ADOS, as Black folks here in the state of California, but also in America. We have a history with affirmative action, right? And let's confront that history honestly, right? The previous versions of affirmative action, in many areas and in many cases have not benefited Black folks in the way that we want, right? And conversely have benefited non-Black groups in tremendous ways, right? So the question is, when this is approved, and we're speaking it into existence here, when this is approved, how do we make sure that these benefits go to Black California? So Presidia, you touched on it. Maureen, you touched on it. My feedback is very similar. The first thing is we are going to need to organize. Okay, organize. And I made this point yesterday to the group when we were getting ready for the broadcast today. I've said it a number of times, and this is not my saying, and I don't remember exactly where this comes from, but this has been a very powerful organizing principle that I've operated from. You only get what you're organized to take. Okay, you only get what you're organized to take. So if you want something, if you want to get something, you have to be organized to get it. So the first thing that we're going to be doing and need to do is organize. Guess what? You are already sitting in some of that organizing work right now. You're watching some of that organizing work right now. You're a part of some of that organizing work right now. In the organizing world, it's also important to be organizing as early as possible, right? So if you notice, we have convened a series of community conversations around Prop 16, specifically talking to the Black ADOS California community. We've organized California ADOS for Prop 16 on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram as social media hubs, right? As places to share information, educate, but also to organize Black folks, ADOS folks here in California. So the number one answer is organize and organize early. Okay. Secondly, in addition to the organizing, we're going to need to continue to build power, okay, among the Black ADOS political community here in California. That's one of the reasons why ADOS California exists as an organizing group, as a political group on the ground. So one of the reasons why ADOS Sacramento exists, ADOS Bay Area exists, ADOS LA, ADOS SoCal, ADOS San Diego, ADOS Inland Empire, ADOS Fresno, Creators for the Cause, the ADOS Ancestry Group coming out of San Bernardino, and the many other ADOS groups that are on the way here in the state of California. It's the reason why we exist, okay, is to, one, do that organizing work, right? But then also to build power. Okay? There's power in numbers, there's power in expertise and education, but building power is continuing to build power is the second thing that we are going to have to do in order to get from what we want to what we get, right? Third thing is we're gonna have to advocate, okay? Closed mouth don't get fed. Squeaky wheel gets cleaned. Whatever, however you want to call it. Okay? We're going to have to advocate in an organized, powerful way. We're going to have to advocate. And Presidia, you touched on this, and I think you did also, Maureen. It's not just to, it's at every level where we seek benefits. So if it's some state governor initiative that's targeting resources, we need to be advocating to the governor's office, and we will be. If it's to our state assembly folks, we will be advocating for legislation statewide. If it's to our state senators for legislation statewide, we will be advocating to our state legislators. If it's to our county boards of commissioners, our school boards, our city councils, whatever you have, whatever the governing body is, wherever the resources are, that's where we will be advocating. Okay? So it's about organizing, about building power, and about advocating. Those are three of the ways and three of the strategies that you're going to see us continue to roll out through the passage of Prop 16. And we've begun those kinds of strategies, quite frankly, before there was a Prop 16, right? Back when this was ACA 5 in the state legislature, you saw, if you didn't see, if you go on ADOS California Media, you hit the back button and go to some of the early videos, okay? You will see us organized in front of and within and inside of the Capitol here in California, in Sacramento, advocating for ACA 5, which would eventually become Prop 16, advocating for affirmative action early. So organizing, building power, and advocating are three of the ways that we are going to ensure that we go from where we are and what we want to where we need to be and what we get. That's my relatively brief feedback. You'll see that play out in a number of different ways in real life over the next several weeks and several months, but very interested to hear what you think and what you feel are going to be some of the ways in which we go from where we are to where we want to be. So if you have any ideas, feel free to drop your ideas in the chat, leave a comment. This is an important question because to confront our history with affirmative action, honestly, there were federal and state affirmative action programs in existence prior to California outlawing ours back in the mid 90s, and the benefits did not always go to Black folks in the way that we wanted them to. So the question is, how do we prevent that from happening? And how do we ensure that we get our fair share this time? So Maureen, Presidia, do you have any final thoughts, closing thoughts with respect to either this final question or anything that we've discussed so far today?
Yeah, I want to touch on something that you just said, Chris, that I think is really important and something that I believe is going to be really paramount for the ADOS community moving forward with this piece of legislation and with the legislation in California and in other states, because we know that California has set an example with our reparations bill, and then we're also moving forth with other pieces of legislation. But I don't want community members that are in other states to think that what we've done here in California is really that difficult in their own states. What I am going to say is that this is the time that ADOS needs to have a singular identity and really begin to push the issue that we are going to fight for equality. As I said, you know, when people talk about what's in this for ADOS, remember that it was an ADOS woman that started this. And so as much as we're looking at other communities that are in it and that are grabbing pieces of it, I always have to center us and bring us back to the reality that I started this, that regardless that, you know, you don't really see that. And so we can really get lost in, you know, who's going to get what. But I've asked last week and I'll ask again, you know, fight with me for the equality that is ours. And you said that, you know, and I agree with you, Chris, that a closed mouth don't get fed. We can't expect that people are going to just do what's right. That would be great. I'm not holding my breath for that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to join myself with those that are fighting with me for the community so that we can begin to get the things that are justly and rightfully ours. If that's contracts, if that's admissions into the UCs, if that's employment, we need to be able to recognize when we are being treated unfairly. And as you pointed out, if it's going to government agencies, we go as a unit. If it is going into the universities and demanding that they enroll more ADOS students because we recognize that's not happening, then we go in force as a unit because there is power in numbers. My last point, and I will close with this, when I worked in the state assembly, that was the one thing that I saw that really opened my eyes to how politics really works, is that anytime there was a piece of legislation, the communities that was impacted by that legislation showed up in numbers. That means whether they called the legislators' offices and they gave their support or opposed it, they did it in great numbers. That means they would communicate and they would say, listen, at 5:30, we're all gonna jam the phone lines and we're all gonna call. Or they said, hey, this is the day that we're all showing up and going to the Capitol and we're going to talk to everybody in those walls. I did not see our community do that in the entire time that I was in the assembly. And that to me says that we have to recognize that's another part of it, is that we have to show up. I know that the system has not treated us fairly, but we can't check out and then think that we're going to get the results that we want. We have to engage. And that means that we have to begin to call it out when we see it, not just online, but show up, go to the assembly, call them on the phone, send emails en masse, go to the colleges, send emails to the presidents and the chancellors. And here's something else. When it happens to one of us as ADOS, we need to take the identity that it happens to all of us. So that means that if it's happening to you, I jump in that fight with you and that I begin to advocate with you so they know that you are not alone. That's how ADOS is going to ensure that Proposition 16 is for us, because if you go for a contract and you don't get it, that means the whole ADOS community rallies behind you and holds them accountable for that. And we have to do that over and over and over, because what's happening is in California, we're only 5% of the population. We're the least in California, right? Of all of the demographics, we're the least. And so we have to move collectively every time. And I believe that will really see the results that we need to see, is if we collectively move in action around all of those areas. But we can't have one person doing it by themselves and then the rest of us are just sitting back saying, okay, well, that didn't work out. No, we have to say that, you know what? If it happens to you, I'm in this with you. So that means we have to communicate. We have to begin to let each other know what contracts we're going after, what jobs we're going after, what school we're trying to get into. We need to be our own watchmen. And when it doesn't happen, then we get back and we say, all right, this is who we're going to contact. And then we contact them and we hold them accountable. And I will be right there. I will be there to fight this beyond November the 3rd. I made that promise. I started this not just to get on the ballot, but to ensure equity. And I still intend to do that.
Power. Presidia, if you have any final thoughts or final comments, and then I'm gonna follow up, but powerful.
I would like to just echo what Maureen has said. We have a wonderful individual in the chat that has expressed very hopeless views of what we are capable of doing. And I want to say now that knowing ADOS people and the power that we accumulate through our organizing, I have so much faith and I know it's possible. So when we think of the individual mind and how it can be manipulated, how it can change over time, how it can change with facts, how it can change with data, and we have allies, we have people who are on our side, we have so many other minority groups who are really fighting for the same exact thing. They want to be heard. But as we fight together, we also understand that we fight for our own group, but we have collective power in our own group as ADOS. And so I just want to say that, Maureen, that was beautifully said. We're fighting together. We're refusing to be at the bottom, and we're going to fight like hell, period. That's the only option.
Absolutely. And with that, wanna end with a call to action, because I'm happy that we're ending on the question of how do we get what we want, right? Because a lot of times we talk about what we want, we talk about what we don't have, right? Rightfully so, what we want, but how do you go from here to there, right? And excuse me, there's a lot of different ideas about how you go from here to there. A lot of them don't work, okay? If they work, we wouldn't be asking the question over and over again, right? But what does work is organizing, okay? You'll be surprised about what you can get done with organizing, even if collectively your group doesn't have the, let's say, numbers that some other groups do, right? If you can out-organize groups, you can get outsized benefits, okay? That's true at every level. And you by yourself doing something may be great, awesome, absolutely necessary. But imagine if me and you went together, and then me, you, and her went together, and then all of us brought somebody else together, and then we all went, right? There's more power that way. There's power in numbers. There's power in organizing, okay? And there's power in organized numbers, right? So organizing is a key part of how we're going to go from where we are to what we want. And let's talk about how we organize. ADOSCAmedia@gmail.com. ADOSCAmedia@gmail.com. If you are interested in getting involved in the fight to make sure that Prop 16 benefits flow to ADOS, to Black folks in California, send us an email, get on our team, and let's work and let's organize to make it happen. It's ADOSCAmedia@gmail.com. The organizing starts now, right? To be honest with you, it started yesterday, okay? Right now, yesterday. We want you. We need you. We need us right now. If we're going to get the kind of benefits that we deserve, the way we've talked about it over the past year or so, we've described them as big, measurable benefits, fast and first. Okay, that's what we want as Black California from Prop 16. Big, measurable benefits, fast and first. Okay, if that's what you want, whether it be in education, public contracting, public hiring, wherever you think the benefits are, email us at ADOSCAmedia@gmail.com. The email's in the chat, and get involved. If you are comfortable, leave your contact information in the in the chat as well. If you're not comfortable leaving it publicly, adoscamedia@gmail.com is how you get in contact with us and how you get involved in the fight. I do want to address as we wrap up here, and one, I want to thank Maureen. I want to thank Presidia, two of the heavy hitters here in the ADOS California family, who have been putting in real work, real measurable work on the ground since day one. I am honored to be a part of this kind of conversation. I am honored to be a part of this kind of fight with you all. So, I want to send y'all a special shout out. But I do want to get to some of the comments in the chat too. There was some comments around data, about us needing data. There are that's a very, very important point. The ADOS movement is data driven, right? And so we are very focused on data, on information. One of the things that bringing down Prop 209 and passing Prop 16 will do is allow us to collect better data. Okay? It will allow us to collect better data. Right now, we have even a hard time knowing how many contracts went to Black folks, even knowing how many students are enrolled that are Black folks or that are ADOS folks. We have a hard time even knowing how many jobs the public contracts go to, right? For Black folks specifically, we have a hard time knowing that, largely and in many cases because of Prop 209 and because we don't have something like Prop 16. And that's why we are in favor of and encouraging you as an ADOS Black California community to vote yes on Prop 16. If you have your ballot already, if you haven't mailed it in, mail it in with a yes on Prop 16. If you're like me, who wants to go into the polling place and ballot center and just experience, walk it in there with a yes on Prop 16, and let's make a Black agenda legal again. There are some other comments too about how we go from here to there. One thing I'll say is don't give up. Okay, don't give up. If you've been fighting the fight on your own, connect with ADOSCA at adoscamedia@gmail.com. Right? Get involved. We are regularly organizing on Prop 16. If you are someone who's tried it in the past, try again. All right. This is too important to give up on. Right. This is about us. It's about our children. Right. This is about our families. I wouldn't let anything stop me from making sure that I am a part of the fight with respect to bringing affirmative action back and making sure that the benefits come specifically to Black folks here in California specifically. So one, I want to thank everybody once again. We won't take up any more of your time. I want to thank our amazing moderators in the chat, right? I want to thank Dr. K, Monica. I think Ricky's in there somewhere too. What's up, Ricky? Shout out to Ricky. Also, again, I want to thank our amazing panelists. We will be back next week for our third and final installment of ADOSCA for Prop 16 Community Conversations. Okay, and we will be having our final broadcast before the November 3rd election day deadline. The last day to vote is November 3rd. Right now, go out and vote. Check out the ADOS California Media voter guide too. Again, we are yes on Prop 16. Any final words, Maureen or Presidia, before we close it out?
No, I just want to say thank you to everyone that took out some time on their Saturday to come and talk about this topic, because this is really so important. Thank you so much, Presidia, for giving your time to this. And Chris, it's really humbling. As I said, and I will just always say it, ADOS has really stood behind me on this. And if it were not for ADOS, I would not have the energy and the fortitude to keep fighting. but that just lets me know that, that we are in this together. And it gives me the strength to keep fighting another day. So thank you so much, Chris, and for putting on this 3-part series, because this is really important. This is the conversations that we need to have. This is why I started this fight. And if it were not for ADOS, we wouldn't be having this conversation and being able to be transparent and talk about how we can actually ensure that our community is not overlooked with Prop 16. So I really don't take this conversation lightly. I'm glad that we're having it. Come back next week in our final segment. But then, as we said, it doesn't stop there. When this, I too am going to speak into existence. When this passes, that's when our real work starts. That's when our organizing 2.0 starts. And that's when we really begin to go after and ensure that our community is not left behind. So thank you again, everybody that's out there. I really appreciate all of you that have voted. If you have not voted yet, please vote. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Presidia. Any final words?
I just want to say, let's fight. Let's survive. Let's do all we can to get what we know we deserve as ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery. A yes on Prop 16. Maureen, your work will not be in vain. ADOS, your vote will not be in vain. We can do this.
Thank you, fam. Appreciate it. Great way to end. I'll say it one more time, adoscamedia@gmail.com. Get involved in the fight. And by the way, fam, we do have some good news with respect to Prop 16. Last time we checked, Prop 16 was doing very well in some of the early polling and some of the early, okay. So it looks like we're on our way to passing Prop 16, but we have to finish strong. Okay? We got to finish strong. We can't let up. We got to keep our foot on the gas, right? So let's finish strong. Tell someone else, and tell somebody else too to vote yes on Prop 16. With that, we bid you adieu. We'll see you next week, and be safe. Great job, fam.
We got